Hello, everyone. Panelists, we can all wave and say hello. Love it. Welcome. I hope we're all enjoying Stream Queens Con 3. This is the third time we're doing this amazing event. As I always say at the beginning of the panels that I moderate, a huge shout out to our chat moderators, huge shout out to the Stream Queens momagers for doing so much behind the scenes that y'all don't even know about to make sure that this event goes off without a hitch. And thank y'all here in the chat for being here, supporting these incredible creators. We're about to have one of my favorite conversations that we do each year at Stream Queens Con. We are here with a panel called Creators with Disabilities, and we're going to be chatting with some creators with disabilities. I will very quickly introduce myself. I go by Sir Real Camille. As a musician, I go by Sir Real. As a drag artist, I go by Camille Eon, because I just be changing shit. And the reason I moderate this panel is because although I'm not living with a disability myself, I have a history of working with children and adults on the autism spectrum. I have a history of working with those with disabilities in my family, just out in the world. So this is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. But today's not about me. I'm here to facilitate a conversation, and we're gonna jump right into our amazing dais of panelists, and we're just gonna see what they do, talk to them about their experiences, and I really just want to encourage everyone here to just listen, learn, and enjoy. So first on our dais, we have a fellow stream queen, a fellow drag artist. We have Renee DeLay. Renee DeLay is Manchester, UK's resident drag thing. Renee is a chaotic, crunchy rice pudding, the kind your grandma used to make, only with much more neon and absurdity. Renee rejects the norm and dances to her own tune, albeit badly, her words, and brings her experiences of neuro and physical divergence to the online drag world. Welcome to the digital stage, Renee DeLay. Hi, Renee, how you doing?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. This is the biggest opportunity I've had in a long time, so just thank you for having me. Thank you for mangling where I'm from. No one needs to know that. That's not important. So
you're incredible, Renee. So glad that we have this opportunity to chat together and about such an important topic. So welcome on in. Up next, we have Soy Milk, whose pronouns are they/them. Soy Milk, aka Chi Chi, is a cozy variety streamer and social justice advocate who participates in indie game showcases, chats about various aspects of their identity, and conducts co-working and body doubling streams. Along with gaming, they work as a social justice advocate for transgender and race-related rights. They study psychotherapy, run a disabled content creators collective, and love playing with their 4 cats. My God, yes. Soy Milk enjoys soft aesthetics, plushies, frogs, and all things cute and sweet. In less than 2 years, Soy Milk has cultivated a safe and educative space that operates on positivity, accountability, and inclusivity. Join Soy Milk and the soybeans for a cozy vibe full of growth and love. Hope to see you soon. Soy Milk is neurodivergent, multiply disabled, transgender, and queer. Hello, Soy Milk. How are we today?
I'm doing very well. I'm really happy to be here.
Love it. This bio is legendary. I absolutely love that. All
very
right.
long.
Listen, I can read in more ways than one, and we're doing it. Up next on our dais is another drag creator. We have Neurocosmos, whose pronouns are he and they. Neurocosmos is a gloriously autistic, trans-masked, queer, Jewish drag autist/king based in Washington, D.C. With every flap of his hands, he revels in his disabled trans beauty. They come here to explore their autistic trans being and experience. He dreams of a world where all disabled trans people are liberated from the oppressions that seek to erase us from existence. They dream of a world where drag is recognized as one of many ways to build disability justice. He dreams of a world where all of us are free in our bodies, filled with the joy of flourishing exactly as we are. They dream of a disabled trans future. Welcome on in, Neurocosmos. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, and I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm so excited and honored to be among everyone. Thank you so much.
Love it. So glad you can make it today, and can't wait to chat. Yes. And last but certainly not least, we have May Lee. May Lee is a 34-year-old disabled Black woman from Southern California, advocate and conjointly builder, a founder of the Phoenix Alliance Foundation. Hi, May Lee.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm so happy to be here and really have my inability to write a bio put on blast.
You are perfect. Listen, bios come in all shapes and sizes. I've read a bunch this weekend, and we've had paragraphs, we've had sentences, and I'm here for all of them. Before we jump into all of our deep questions, is there anything else any of y'all want to add about what your content is, what you do out in the world or here on the internet? Renee, anything else you want to add?
Oh, bold of you to assume I do much of anything, really. If I'm honest, I make it up as I go along. What I realised in my bio, listening to everyone else's, I didn't actually say what my differences were, did I? That was a bit of a mistake.
No, not at all.
So I have a myriad of differences, shall we say. I'm a deaf person, so I'm sorry if I miss anything that anyone says. I've got my little headphones in turned up to absolute max, so please shout at me if I'm ignoring you. I might be being rude. I also might just not be hearing you. But it'll all be chaos from my side, so I hope everyone's prepared for that.
This is that chaos you wanted, and we're here for it. So I love that. Soy Milk, anything else you wanted to add about your content?
No, I think that captured everything. Thank you.
Soy Milk said, I said it all in there, and I love it. Neuro, anything else you wanted to add about your content or your drag?
Yeah, I think I'll cover a lot of it in a bit. But I will say that the neurodivergent infinity pride symbol and my trans flag facial hair are signature, and I always like this is every time I go out and perform. And my tagline is the flaming drag autist of DC, here to neuroqueer your universe.
Okay. I love that. To neuroqueer your universe. Well, have at it. Mei Lee, anything else you wanted to add about your content?
Yeah. The Chronic Love community it's in our 6th year now, and we do everything from TV and movie watches to events and birthday parties, music festivals, movie festivals, and we have the whole disability community is allowed to basically put influences and ideas whenever they can, and we like to run with them. When once somebody was like, we should just celebrate Keanu Reeves for a weekend, and we did that.
I love that. And that's what it is. It's you work with your community and you see what everyone feels strongly about and just go with it. I love that approach. So we're going to jump into some questions. We have a lot of, we're going to cover some heavy topics. We're going to cover some uplifting topics. But the first thing we're going to discuss is a question submitted by Neurocosmos. This is for everyone, of course. Do you feel like you center your disabled or chronically ill identity and experiences in your drag or content? And we'll go in the same order for the entirety of the panel. So let's start with Renee.
So I was really intrigued by this question because I'm a person who's realized that I'm disabled later in life. I was only diagnosed with hearing loss about 4 years ago at a rough guess, and that took me as a surprise. I always was under the impression that I just wasn't hearing things, and that was like the norm, really. So discovering a disabled identity for me, it's been a process. It's been a long running process. I've always thought of my own identity as more of a whole rather than having particular boxes that I put myself in. I've never enjoyed a checkbox, and I like to approach things in very much from a perspective of you get the whole me or none of me. So as I'm coming to terms with what my disabilities are, with my deafness, my ASD, I have scoliosis as well, which was super fun when I slipped disc. Two at the same time. I try to, whilst I recognize that I have these differences and different needs from most people, I try to not let them define who I am as a person. And I like my actions and my words to speak for me rather than the physicality of my body.
I think that's incredible. So I just love that philosophy. I love that you get all of me or none of me. I think that's really cool. I love that. Soy Milk, how about you?
Yes, I would say I definitely center my disabled identities in pretty much all that I do. I center in my work as a therapist, I center in my work as a streamer, and I center in my work in developing my own disabled content creators collective. I like to use tags, especially to indicate that one, I'm autistic, and two, I'm very highly irritable, and that is just part of how my mental illness manifests. I like to be clear, I like to be honest, transparent, and I like to have open conversations about what it's like navigating this space, not only as a disabled person, but as a Black disabled person.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot to be said for intersectionality within the disabled community, because I know that there's also there's marginalization within the disabled community itself, and that's something that I'm sure we'll be touching on throughout the panel as well. Nura, how about you?
Yes. So every single performance piece I do as a drag artist is about celebrating and exploring autistic slash disabled trans being. Neurocosmos is the gloriously loud autistic trans being I aspire to fully become, and their future version of me that I need to imagine for myself and other autistic trans people in the world. To me, being autistic encompasses my whole self. One of the founders of the autistic rights movement, Jim Sinclair, who's also intersex and agender, like said about being autistic, it colors every experience. Like that's how I approach like the facets of the performance and drag that I do, and I personally see my autistic identity and trans identity as interconnected with each other. I'm creating art on discovering my autistic trans joy, basking in my disabled sexuality and feeling pleasure and within myself as a disabled person, and challenging the ableism and transphobia combination that exists in our society. And when I perform, I sometimes begin with some spoken soliloquies like written by me that I deliver live and then do the song lip sync. But I'll expand on later. All of my dance movement and body movement is rooted in my stems. You'll see flaps, you'll see spinning, you'll see rocking back and forth and and side to side. This being autistic is a physical embodiment in everything that I do in my performance. It can't it can't really be otherwise for me. And being it's both I'm bringing both lived experience to my drag and also political and also political understanding.
That's incredible. And I know I have more questions about that when we get to one of the later questions we're gonna ask, but I just love how much you consider every part of what you do and how to tie it to your experience. And I just think that's really powerful. And of course, last but absolutely not least, May Lee, do you feel like you center your disabled or chronically ill identity or experiences in your contents? We have you muted, my friend.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I think our community centers disabled and chronically ill people first, and then we center it in our content. And part of that reason is because before we can even get to what is the content, we have to create an environment where people can feel safe watching content. A lot of the times we're watching something and I don't like spoilers. Like, we have a rule against spoiling anything more than 10 years old. Once it's more than 10 years old, you should have already seen it if you didn't want spoilers. But, but other than that, there's a no spoilers rule. But sometimes I have to come in and be like, trigger warning, there's about to be something on screen that might bother some people, and I need to let them know that's coming. And a lot of people have said how much that makes them feel like they're comfortable watching, or they can safely watch it. And they're like, I wasn't going to actually watch this show. I thought it would be too much for me, but I know in this environment, I can do it in a safe way. And then when it comes to our content, like, we really have to go through years of kind of developing a system of, well, we always prioritize disability content that represents disability or chronic illness on screen. But that is still also a very complicated issue, because you have authentic representation and you have authentic representation behind the camera. Maybe there's no one disabled really who's authentically disabled on camera, but maybe someone who is authentically disabled wrote the show. And also there's like inauthentic representation, but like diverse disability representation, 98% of the time, 99 really, it's not going to be a real disabled actor or a real person with that chronic illness or mental health condition. But that representation is already so rare that we still need to watch it, because our influence on ratings, our buying power as a community matters. And the way that we show the industry we need more of that is by watching those things. And then it still immediately leads to advocacy for ourselves, because once you're watching these things, you're like, okay, now we need to go talk about how wrong this is and how they need to get it right next time. And sometimes it's more than just inauthentic representation, it's straight misrepresentation, dangerous misrepresentation of what the disability experience is. And you can't talk about that if you don't know what it is. A lot of times people have asked, why are we watching this? Like, this is a nightmare for a disabled person. And it's like, that's why we're watching it. Because when your auntie tells you she loved that movie, and you won't know to be like, well, let me tell you the reasons why you shouldn't have loved it and why it was harmful to our entire community. You cannot have those discussions if you're not aware of what this content actually entails. So, and watching those things together with a group that's like, we're all yelling at the screen together, makes you feel like you're not alone in a vacuum. You are in a world that is creating content that can hurt you, but also you're not the only person who's screaming at the screen about it.
That's so true. And we've even had discussions on this panel in years past about, you know, I feel like a lot of marginalized communities face misrepresentation in the media, but I feel like the disabled community and the chronically ill community faces misrepresentation that is then applied more consistently in how people behave in the real world, and that can lead to very harmful things. And so I think that it's very powerful that you speak on that and make it such a priority within your community. So
I just want to say, I think you could draw a line from a lot of media that started in around 2014 that had a very pro suicide message for disabled people, to laws and policies that have changed in the last 5 years that are basically pushing disabled people to kill themselves.
Those are the things, those are the hard conversations that like make people like uncomfortable, but it's so important to point that out and to call that out. So thank you for bringing that to the table. That's something that I haven't, like the 2014 connection, I have not heard that myself. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, because after the Me Before You movie, there was an immediate increase in young people who were choosing assisted suicide instead of going further in like their disability would have progressed. And they were like, I'm just going to end it. And since then, it's just really escalated.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll speak more about issues from people with disabilities and people without them, but I actually want to turn this to within the disabled community now with this next question. How do you all navigate the disabled or the chronically ill community? Have you ever been called not disabled enough or too disabled to have a future? This was something submitted from Renee DeLay. And we can start with Renee. Sorry.
So with this question, I sat down and had a real think about what I wanted to discuss before we came on. And as I said earlier, I'm a person who's slowly realizing that I have these disabilities later in life, some of which are diagnosed, some of which I'm going through the process of currently. And I have quite a good support network. I've got some lovely friends who are extremely supportive. And fairly recently, I met two people with ASD and a lot of other disabilities and needs and differences. And what was really telling for me is that when they realized that I too am a disabled person, one of them actually asked me, "Why don't you have a disabled badge for your car?" And I sat down and thought, I didn't know that was an option for me. As ridiculous as that sounds, I didn't know that was an option for me. I've been through all of these diagnoses, been under the NHS in the UK for such a long time, going through problem after problem after problem. And not once was it actually raised by a medical professional that I could have had support with any of those issues. It was just like, yeah, this is what your problem is. Off you go and deal with it. And what was really telling for me during this discussion with them was that I immediately felt this sense of guilt. And I went home and I slept on it and I was like, where did that come from? When I really examined it, it turned out that I felt guilty for having the right to this provision that I felt that I didn't need, because throughout my entire life, I had always been told, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just forgetful, or, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just really clumsy, or, yeah, you've got backache, just get up and walk it off. And all of these little microaggressions, because my disabilities aren't visible, they are physical, but they're not ones you can physically see. That had ingrained this sense of, you're not entitled any help, you're not entitled any support. And that was extremely damaging to me. And I'm still fighting, I realize, with all of this pent up trauma that I didn't even know I had. And that's really disappointing, because even today I meet people and I say, oh yeah, I'm a deaf person and I might need you to repeat things, I might need you to speak up, I might need you to just go into things, because I might hear the words you're saying but I might not have the comprehension of what those words actually mean. And there are still times when I have conversations with people who know that I am deaf and I am operating at less than 50% normal range of hearing, and I say, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? And they tut and roll their eyes. And that's really, really hard,
Yeah.
because they don't even know they do it. And I call them out on it. And I'm like, you do realize that you did that, right? I have no idea what you said. I didn't understand it. I didn't hear it. I need you to repeat it for me. I need you to go slower. And I'm sorry that that's an inconvenience for you. This thing I didn't choose was inconvenient for you, not me. So it's difficult, because I for the people like that, I'm never disabled enough to warrant any differentiation, to see any differences in my day-to-day life, and it's really disappointing.
Absolutely. And like you, as you were talking about people rolling their eyes at you needing to have something repeated, I'm rolling my eyes at them, because it's like, this isn't about you, just repeat it, like calm down. But thank you for proposing this question and for sharing your experience, Renee. Soy, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I really, really like this question a lot. In creating a disabled content creators collective, I noticed that a lot of other neurodivergent people would kind of negate the experiences that I had as an autistic person, and often assume that I wasn't even autistic when I was speaking on things that applied to the autistic community. And that made me a lot louder. I started to promote more BIPOC who are autistic and make sure that we're heard in this space, and also make sure that people don't try and silence me about what I experience and about what I go through. And I think that that's made me a stronger person, a stronger advocate, even though I shouldn't have to be strong. I have every right to, not be strong sometimes. But it's been really important for me to realize that I am going to be, minimalized a lot in this space as a Black Autee, and that it's really important to find community within the BIPOC Autee space to make sure that I feel validated.
Absolutely. I love how you came to that priority. They didn't think you had the right to speak on it, so you got louder. Like that's I love that response. Nura, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yes. So a little bit of the journey on my end is that I was diagnosed early in the early 2000s. So while I did experience early diagnosis, I was also raised in a heavily anti-autistic environment. So it took a lot of being my own teacher and mentor and going online to find autistic acceptance within myself and find disabled community. Kind of fast forwarding to now. So I started out from there in DC disability rights activist organization space that are led by disabled people. And I have since mostly left that space to transition into doing disability justice through drag. It became apparent that the disability rights spaces I was in were not centering um, Black, Indigenous, Latine, trans, queer people, and etc., and multi marginalized disabled people in that space. And during that time, I witnessed a lot of racism, xenophobia, misogyny from other witnessed disabled activists commit those things. And there were disabled people who made very anti-autistic um, com- comments towards autistic people, and within activism, it was very white cis led. And then as I come into and discover the drag community where I live, I'm finding community mainly with Black, Indigenous, Latine, trans, canes, and artists, and they're the ones who have been giving me community care and family and empowerment and mentorship, like really for the time in my life. And being in drag community really transformed my worldview. At the time I was in the process of becoming a drag artist, I was directly experiencing classism and transphobia from other disabled activists in a disability rights space I was working in. I realized that my passion for disability justice through drag didn't really fit. And drag is where I'm getting space to grow, do transportive work, be happy, and be loved. So now I have transitions to to drag space to do this work. So now with drag space that I'm navigating, say many drag artists around me have the lived experience of disability and don't identify as disabled or identify as neurodivergent, but not disabled for many reasons. A lot of it being it's not safe to be op- openly disabled when you're a disabled black person or a disabled indigenous indigenous person. A lot of people don't feel that they count as disabled. So I've shifted into kind of initially adjusting my language to bring more artists into what I know by and then making it clear who is included in the disability umbrella. Like neurodivergent, you are under a disability umbrella that includes anxiety and depression. If you're a person with HIV, that is a disability. Substance use disorder, that is disability. Migraines, that is a disability. So focus for me has really become now, how can I make sure the disability justice ideas that I have read about are in the hands of Black and Indigenous, Latine, disabled drag artists, trans drag artists in my community, so they can build upon what they're already doing? How do I create space where it's safe for BIPOC disabled drag artists to be openly disabled and for all disabled drag artists to emerge in disabled identity? So it's become more, what I do is become more rooted in what the community created by Black, Indigenous, Latina, disabled, trans folks already have created, and how it can grow from there.
You're awesome, Nura. I that's incredible. Like that is that's a dissertation, because you're not just finding your community, you're also seeking ways to uplift people who experience different types of intersectionality, and you're clarifying what disability is, and all those things are so important, because so many people who don't share these lived experiences might have preconceived notions about what constitutes a disability or what is seen as a disability or a chronic illness, and a lot of people tend to leave many out when even if they're trying to be inclusive, they still tend to leave people out of the equation. So thank you for speaking on all of that. Maylee, I've seen you nodding, I've seen you loving a lot of these responses. How does this question appeal to you, or what do you think of this?
Super active nodder.
Yes.
I really like this question because I think, well, when I got my first major diagnosis in high school, it was a lot to deal with, like accepting myself, like that. It's like you're starting your own very long journey of accepting yourself as being disabled. And then you have people that say things to you that often make that harder for you. Like my teachers and school counselors told me I wasn't college material anymore because I was too sick. And then even when I was in school, I had a teacher who I was getting A's on all the tests and everything, but I just wasn't coming to his class as much because I was really sick that semester. And he was like, if you're sick, you shouldn't be in school. And that was just something he felt like very comfortable saying to my face. And I was just sitting here like, wow, you're an educator. Okay. And that makes it harder often to accept yourself, because like, do you want to be disabled when this is what people think of someone who's disabled? Like someone's telling you, well, if you're going to be disabled, then you might as well throw your dreams away. Like that makes it harder for disabled people to accept themselves.
Yeah.
Because most of my disabilities were invisible, I had like both the issue of trying to prove to people I am disabled and I do need care and I need this access and accessibility and things like that. But at the same time, I was also not sure if I wanted to be that disabled, because like how much it's going to limit what I'm able to do as a person according to what other people are telling me.
Absolutely. GBZ in the chat said, so much ableism with attendance and performance standards. That's education. That is a lot of workplaces.
And attendance, like to me, I spent so much time learning about attendance because I thought it was really ridiculous that you get to college and they still care. Like I'm paying you to be here. Like, why do you care if I'm here? If I fail, I spent the money. Why do you care? And it's because every school is still paid by the student's attendance. Unless it's completely private, they're getting a government dollar for like every hour you're there. And that is the only reason why they're taking your grade down if you're not there, which is just capitalism hurting you for being disabled. It's very ridiculous.
100%. By the way, as we're going through these conversations, everyone be sure to hit the dynamic follow button. That will lead you to our friends on the panel who are also Twitch streamers, Renee Delay and Soy Milk. We also have commands in the chat for Neuro and for Mei Lee. Be sure to go and check out their content as well. We got link trees for both of them. And don't forget to also follow the link tree for Chronic Loaf, which is attached to Mei Lee's command. Be sure to support these creators. They are speaking on important things, and they're also just great creators that are doing cool shit. So go and check them out.
Can I respond to what Renee said? I just remembered.
Please.
I was just thinking when you were talking about the doctors never offering you resources. I had been disabled for 10 years when I asked for a parking placard. And the doctor told me, I don't want you to give up.
Yeah, I can kind of
trust it.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that. I mean, not so much from the doctors, but from people that I do know. Because when I was first diagnosed with my hearing loss, I found out it was degenerative, and the unfortunate reality is that at some point I am going to lose all of the hearing that I've got left. which is, as I'm sure you can imagine and identify with, that's extremely threatening to a person who has found out that later in life and it's coming extremely quickly. And I remember sitting in the doctor's office and I was going in for a surgery to see if they could rebuild some of the degeneration areas. And during the pre-op, the person that I'd taken with me to support me, because I wasn't allowed to drive out after the surgery for the obvious reason, they actually said, I didn't realize this was that much of a problem for you. And I'm like, we're literally sat here looking at x-rays and MRIs of the inside of my head where you can see holes. And those holes have increased since the last time you came with me and you didn't realize that this was a problem. Okay, then. And this was someone close to me, and that's the nature of what we deal with realistically. And I don't think that, no offense meant to anyone who's watching the channel at all, I don't really think that the public really appreciates that even when it's nearest and dearest, this is someone who cares for me, this is someone who loves me and wants the best for me, and they still had that inbuilt ignorance of, oh, I didn't expect it to be like this for you. And I'm like, well, why did you think we were here? Just no. I just thought I'd go to the hospital for a day out, you know what I mean? Let's get a surgeon to open the inside of my head because I'm bored. You know?
I think that a lot of times non-disabled or able people want to protect themselves from the disability experience, which is why they want us to get better. Because if you get better, then this is over. And like, I could stop thinking about it. Being worried about you is stressful for me. And it's like, that's true. Part of being in a relationship with someone is if they get hurt or if they're going through something, you're going through a little bit of something. But that might be something they're going through forever now. And if you were planning to be friends with them forever, married to them forever, or even just be their cousin who's actually there for them, then you have to accept that this is the new reality.
Yeah, the strange thing is about it, I was asked by someone that, you know, that question that we all get asked, what's it like for you to be, you know, this? And I liken it to having to come out again. It's almost that moment of those people going, yeah, but have you tried to not be? Or, oh, not my child. Or, oh, yeah, well, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, does it? And that there's a lot more of that reaction than people actually sitting down and going, oh, that must be really hard for you. Or, are you okay now that you know this? You know, because it's a lot to take in when you're on the receiving end of it. Imagine, you know, you're the person who I am telling. Imagine what it was like for me as the person going through it to experience that conversation for the first time. You're getting it secondhand, you know? And people find that really, really hard to identify with. Sorry if you just heard the bell ring.
Did it ring? I did not, but I love that.
I just got your outfit, and that's amazing.
Thank you.
I love that it's a functioning bell. I think that's fabulous.
Just be glad I didn't wear the headpiece. There's two on the side of that as well.
Oh, come on now. So, in sort of continuing along this vein, there's a lot of people who don't share in y'all's experiences that make a lot of assumptions that move as if they have agency over your life and how you should be operating and moving. But what do you do in your life or craft or content to reclaim your bodies in an ableist world? And this was a question submitted by Neuro. And we'll just once again start with Renee.
I have to be really honest, and I don't want to be the gloom and doom of the panel because I'm very aware that it may be. This is something that I struggle with. That may be because I've been diagnosed later in life, but I recognize that it's an area of my life that really requires a lot more work from me. I find that I go through periods of, I don't know, maybe denial, where I'm like, I'll be okay, I'll be fine. And then there are other times when I sit down and go, I'm not going to be fine, everything's terrible. And it's very hard to kind of meet that in a healthy place in the middle. But what I do believe very, very strongly in is that the friends that you have and the acquaintances and loved ones that we have, when they're genuine, they really don't mind when you lean on them for support. And I'm coming to realize that I have a lot more close-knit really, really strong relationships that I never really realized that I had. And spending more time with those people and talking to them about my difficulties allows them to learn about what I go through, as well as what I am learning about what I go through. So reclaiming my body and identity, I suppose, is more having those conversations and being prepared to open yourself up. And I worry a lot about the world at the moment because I feel like it's getting less and less accepting in a lot of different areas. And in order to make that re-acceptance happen for myself, I have to start at home.
Absolutely. I love that. And I don't know, I just you and I haven't known each other like super deeply for very long, but we've been, in each other's DMs a bit. And
Three
I
whole
just
minutes.
right. And it's been my favorite 3 minutes. But I love that. And I think that there's a lot of community to be found, and there's, it's a process. And I love that you speaking about finding your diagnoses later in life, and just what that experience is like for you. So I think just continue to lean on people as you do, or when you can, and the process. Um, Moving on to soy milk. Let me make sure I have the order right. Yes, soy milk. What are you doing, or what do you do in your life, craft, or content to reclaim your body in an ableist world?
I definitely make sure to take whatever I want as opposed to just what I need. If I'm feeling like, I want more time or I want more space or I want a break from things, I take that. I don't really, label that based on what my body is feeling like. I base it solely on, whatever I want in that moment. And I think a lot of the times what I like to do is promote this idea that longevity is not the standard of quality. So if I'm having a good run and I'm having all these streams and I'm doing all these great things in my community for a long time, ending that doesn't mean that I'm all of a sudden not an activist, all of a sudden not a good content creator. It just means that I need to break for a moment, and that's part of my journey as well. So promoting, really what I want, again, being very loud and being very vocal about everything that's going on in my life. Sometimes when people come into my chat and they're like, you're mean, or people comment on my tweets, because I'm very vocal on Twitter, and they say that I'm mean or that I'm aggressive, I'm intentionally that way because it's how I like to be. It's how I like to be heard. And I feel like that's the best way to get across the things that I'm experiencing in my body and in my mind in the moment.
I absolutely love that. Like, some aggression is not a bad thing, or, like sometimes it's necessary. So props to you. And I love that you affirm that and reinforce that. Neuro, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so I would say there are two central ways that I reclaim my disabled body in in my art. And one, it's owning my autistic trans identity, how all those come come to come together, and knowing my sexuality, because the fact that I know those things is a threat to abled people. One of the specific forms of ableism transphobia I've experienced is that I've had people tell me that how how could you know you're queer? How could you know you're trans? There is very much a belief in our society that the that being autistic, being a person with intellectual disability, be a person with Down syndrome, somehow inherently means we're incapable of knowing our sexuality and knowing our gender. And it's a very big part of TERF ideology and anti-trans rhetoric in the US, which is a whole other mental essay in my in my brain. But I do my drag always centering my autistic trans identity, because I know that embodying all of that interconnectedness is a radical act of resistance. The second thing I do is that I that I root all of my dance on stage in my stems, and I call this stem dance. And I specifically man's the sexuality part of it. I call that stem sensuality. Fusing the idea of like stems is like brains together, like is about activate and engaging with our senses, and combining that with how we think of like what being sensual and sexy feels like. And this is incredibly important to me because what growing up as an autistic person diagnosed in the early 2000s, one of the things that happens to me was that the psychologists and medical professionals around me and my family um, for approached my autistic body with the goal to eliminate all my stems, every single one, no matter what the purpose, the context did not matter. The goal was to eliminate all of them. So because of that, I could not, and lost the ability to flap, to rock, to to spin for the vast majority of my childhood because they were physically stamped out of me. It wasn't until I was 18 that I really got in touch with who I am, and embraced who I am as a person. And while I am in a much better place now, it was going. I became to notice more how hard it was for me to move in physical space, and drag has become this expression of freedom, where I build off. I need to be free in my movement, in my life. So I'm going to root all of my dance movements on stage, to saw every sway to the side, every walk, every footstep, every hand gesture will all be rooted in the stems and in my body. And that's how I reclaim it in the ableist world we live in.
Yeah. I love that you speak so much about stemming and about incorporating it into your drag. As a behavior therapist, I've seen practices at companies that I just did not align myself with at all, because it felt very much like trying to stifle people more so than trying to uh, help people. So I think that there's, even to this day, still a lot of accepted practices that are very concerning in several fields that touch the disabled community. But speaking specifically about autism and behavior therapy, because that's what I have personal experience with. But Mei Lee, what do you do in your life or craft or content to reclaim your body in an ableist world?
I guess that starting the Chronic Love stream was my way of reclaiming my body. I had for years like killed myself, kind of. No, factually, I was killing myself, like working and going to school, and I always did too much. I always worked too much. I always took way too many classes. I never treated my body like it was disabled, even though I needed to. And I still, when I was always doing too much, I was still called lazy all the time. And it was usually because I watched a lot of TV. TV, in my opinion, is an excellent tool for helping you cope with pain. So I watch TV all the time. And a lot of times, even if like I had just gotten back from a full day of school and then working and I was just watching TV, I would still get called lazy by someone. And eventually I just got to the point where I was like, I think I'm going to try to just make a career out of watching TV, because I'm kind of sick. Like, I'm going to embrace it. Like, that's why we're called chronic loaf, because it's just like chronically laying around, being a layabout, being a loafer, being a couch potato, doing nothing. And I started like helping other people who I had been working with in advocacy and activism for years. And I was like, when's the last time you took a break? Have you bought yourself a glass of wine? Have you taking yourself out and just like gotten your nails done? Have you done anything recreational for yourself? You're always doing everything for everybody else and you're taking care of the community, but are you taking care of yourself? And what's going to happen to the community when you burn out? Like, you have to, if you're not living with that mindset, which a lot of us don't, we'll burn ourselves out. And then we feel terrible. Like Soy Milk was saying, it's hard to accept when you need breaks away, but most disabled or chronically ill people have to take sabbaticals. Like they have to have gaps of time off. They're not going to be gone forever, but if they don't do this, their body will break down. Their body will break down to a point where they can't continue their consistency of their work. It's better to take a month or two off and come back. And a lot of people in the disability community won't even treat you like you were gone when you do that. And that's how the environment needs to be for us to be healthy. And so I think that like just dedicating myself to making a job out of staying in bed watching TV was my way of reclaiming my body in this world.
That's incredible. I love how you arrived at the name Chronic Loaf. I think that is so perfect. And it's something that a lot of people, I'm sure, in your community and beyond can connect very closely to. We are nearing the end of our panel, y'all. It is devastating. But for our last question, we're gonna roll it into, I'm gonna pose a question and also have you roll in your plug so that people know where to find you to this question. But let's end on a positive note. I know Renee might still be dreading this question, but what brings you joy? So if you could, so if there's something giving you joy, if you're feeling well represented somewhere, or something that is just bringing positivity into your life, let us know about that, and then let us know where people can find you. And we're unfortunately gonna have to end. Like I said, with the Black panel, with other panels, we could talk about this stuff for ages. Chronic Loaf, Maylee runs a 24-hour channel over at Chronic Loaf, so we could fill days and days with this stuff, but we'll wrap it up with what brings you joy and let us know where we can find you.
So what brings me joy is the knowledge that Jake Gyllenhaal is actually secretly in love with me, but can't say it due to public and contractual reasons. And cows. I can be found on twitch.tv / Renee Delay, all one word, as you can see on the screen under here somewhere, wherever it be. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram on the same. So thank you for being really open. Everyone here, chat and participation in this chat. It's been really freeing being able to have these discussions. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Renee. And Jake, wake up. Let's go. Get Renee in the house. Let's do this. Renee, thank you so much for being so open and sharing your experiences. I've absolutely adored listening to you, and you look great. We didn't plan to match, but we did. I love that.
I mean, we've got to coordinate,
Somehow we'll make it happen. Soy Milk, what brings you joy, and let people know where to find you.
What brings me joy is being here in these spaces, frogs, my cats, and the soybeans. You can find me over pretty much everywhere as Soy Milk, and I hope to see y'all around.
Yes, I love that you said frogs. Our one of our momagers, Doladar, made frog characters for the 4 different momagers on the team, so you'll see them around the stream throughout the weekend. So thank you so much, Soy Milk, for being here. I've absolutely enjoyed getting to know your Twitter and you as well. Neurocosmos.
Yeah, so things that bring me joy. I think the first thing that brings me joy is my drag community, the love and care and mentorship I receive from my fellow trans drag canes, who I'm just gonna shout out with Molasses, Ricky Rose, Rico Pico, Hazel, and Thunderboy Sai, who's on the Indigenous panel tomorrow, and also from a bit outside of DC, but from National Picks Elated and Bad Poppy. I think seeing the disabled trans drag canes and artists around me is one essential things that brings me joy. I think reading disability justice works and practices that then form the roots of my ideas behind my performances bring me joy. long in-depth conversations like this one, and finally happiness and growth in knowing that in this moment I found what makes me happy. So for following me, you can follow me on Instagram at neuroqueercosmos, and you can follow me on Twitter at neurocosmos, and Instagram is where you can find any updates on when and where I'm performing in DC, and hopefully some more in the future.
I love it. Thank you so much. And anytime you have a mental essay you need to get out, you just let us know. I want to hear all of them, Nura. Thank you so much for everything you shared today. And Mei Lee, what brings you joy and where can we find you? Oh, we have you muted, friend.
My bad.
No, you're all good.
What brings me joy? Cannabis, good food, and like knowing my friends are not being killed by the ableist world around us. And my content is always, our stream is literally, it never stops unless there's a technical difficulty, and we haven't had one last more than 2 hours for a long time. So you can always join the Chronic Low stream and just hang out with some other disabled people and neurodivergent people and just see what's up. And you can find our links on Instagram or Twitter under Chronic Loaf and the hashtag Chronic Loaf. You can use that to find us wherever we're at.
I love that. And again, that is a 24-hour stream tailored for the chronic love community, the disabled community, and I just think that is an incredible feat. So thank you for what you're doing, Mei Lee. To all the panelists, thank y'all so much for what you do. Once again, y'all can find me at Surreal Camille, that's Surreal with an I, on all the places. And just thank y'all so much for being here. Hit that dynamic follow button to follow Renee and Soy on Twitch, and be sure to click those links in the chat to follow Neuro and Mei Lee, as well as Mei Lee's community over at Chronic Loaf. This has been an absolute pleasure, y'all. This conversation is always my favorite every time we do Stream Queens Con, so thank you for allowing me to moderate for you, and I just wish you all the best, and we'll see you real soon, I think.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you.